It swung open and they stepped through. Beyond was a wide hallway. They swallowed nervously and began to look around. A short distance away, a metal grate extended across the width of the hallway. They took hold and shook, but it refused to move. Nearby was a pair of elevators. It took only a few button presses to determine that the elevators would not respond to their efforts. They could only assume the elevators were not powered. There was only one door left. Well, looks like we don't have any choice. Yeah. Sure does. Well then, let's open it. Junpei grabbed hold of the knob and quietly pushed the door open. He entered slowly, trying to take in as much of his surroundings as he could. The others followed shortly. Oh, so it's a kitchen. Santa did not look pleased. What were you expecting? Isn't it obvious? The exit. I was hoping this would be the way out of here. You really think it'd be that easy? Yeah, I know. Still. As they talked, Lotus headed deeper into the room, until at last she stood in front of a door. If we can just get through this door, we should come out on the other side of that grate we saw earlier. But don't we need a key for that? Sorry, I guess that wasn't very constructive. Neither Junpei nor Lotus looked terribly happy. Junpei dug the ship map from his pocket and spread it out in front of him. As he did... Hey! What's that? Huh? Oh, yeah, I guess I forgot to tell you. I found this a little while ago. It's a map of the B deck. Before Junpei could finish, Lotus snatched the map away from him. She ran her finger across it, muttering to herself. I knew it. See? Look. Junpei did as he was told. Santa and Jun moved over to look at the map as well. See? We came in here. If we go out there, then we'll be on the other side of the grate. With her finger, Lotus traced a path on the map. She was right. Satisfied that she had been correct, Lotus folded the map and handed it back to Junpei. There's a card reader on the right side of the door. Then that means the key card is somewhere in here, right? That seems the most likely. Alright, we know what we need to do then. Let's get moving. First off, I say we split up and look for clues. Okay. Unfortunately, the search turned up little. Junpei hefted the pot sitting on the stove and looked at it with resignation. Damn, this is getting us nowhere. It's futile. Futile? Is it futile or futile? I'm not sure. You know, a waste, useless, pointless. Oh. Any particular reason you wanted to bring that up? Oh, no reason, really. I was just thinking about futility. She wasn't making much sense. Junpei tried rephrasing his question. Why were you thinking about futility? At last, she answered. Well, it has something to do with the Titanic. The Titanic? Yep. Have you ever heard the story that the sinking of the Titanic was predicted? I think I've heard of this. I'm not sure. No, I haven't. What is it? In 1892, 14 years before the Titanic sank, a novel was published. It was called Futility. It was written by an American novelist named Morgan Robertson. The story was about a big cruise ship colliding with an iceberg and sinking. Of course, if that was the only similarity, there wouldn't be any reason to mention it. It wasn't, though. The name of the ship, its nationality, course, departure time, size, displacement, maximum speed, number of passengers and crew, the number of lifeboats, Even the location of the accident itself, and the cause, and the location of the damage. Everything matches the Titanic almost exactly. It was almost as if he'd seen the whole thing happen. But this book was written 14 years before the Titanic sank. But that's not all. It wasn't just futility that predicted the sinking of the Titanic. There were two other, similar stories written by a man named William Thomas Stead, both of them before the accident, one in 1886 and one in 1892. Stead wrote two stories that had striking similarities to the Titanic disaster. In one, two ships collided, and many of the passengers died because there weren't enough lifeboats. In the other, a ship collided with an iceberg and sank. I don't know. I mean, I'll give you that it seems a little weird, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't too uncommon for ships to hit icebergs back in the day, or even other ships. Right, I knew you'd say that. But what if Stead had some sort of special powers? To be more specific, what if he had the ability to do automatic writing? What? Automatic writing? Wait, are you talking about that thing where someone says they're possessed by a spirit, and then they write a bunch of stuff without knowing what they're writing? Yes. What do you mean, yes? That stuff's a load of bull. Oh, he talks like my dad. My dad doesn't like to curse, so he says bull. Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, that automatic writing isn't a total load. These guys still couldn't have predicted the sinking of the Titanic. When this Stead dude wrote this thing, nobody had died on the Titanic yet. So if automatic writing is about being possessed by spirits of dead people, who the hell possessed him so he could write that stuff? That's not it. What's not it? Stead wasn't possessed by a spirit. He was doing the possessing. What are you smoking? William Thomas Stead was a passenger on the Titanic. He just wrote down what he saw with his own eyes. 20 years before it happened. What? He decided it was probably best to say nothing. What June was saying was insane and utterly absurd. If he tried to take what she was saying seriously, he'd go mad. Junpei smiled uncomfortably. Well, why don't we talk about this some other time, okay? Huh? But... Her voice trailed off, and she glanced at the floor, troubled. Tap, tap. Junpei gave her the most reassuring back pat he could manage, and walked in what he hoped was a casual way out of the room. Sometime later, he heard Lotus's voice from a short distance away. Hey, it looks like there's a small room over here. They converged on her voice and stepped into the room. Almost instinctively, he folded his arms tight across his chest, doing what he could to conserve body heat. I'll make sure that door doesn't close. You can die pretty quickly in a freezer that way. It's cold in here. What is this place? Are you blind? It's a freezer. Well, you don't need to be blind to know that. Santa's teeth had already begun to chatter. Hardly surprising. The freezer was far too cold for someone dressed as he was. Or, like, Lotus, however, was in an even worse situation, I was about to say. Oh, no way. That's way too cold for me. I'll freeze solid in seconds. Sorry, but I'm afraid I'll have to pass on this one. I'm going to leave the rest to you. And with that, she ran out of the room. Oh, it's really cold in here. White puffs of steam hovered in front of their faces as they talked. June had already started to shiver. Hey, you don't need to be in here. You had a fever just a little bit ago. You should stay outside. We got this. No, I'm fine. My fever's gone now. But Junpei had scarcely opened his mouth. when the thunderous sound of metal upon metal rang out from behind them. In unison, they spun around to find that the door they had only recently come through, oh no, it was closed. Junpei rushed to the door. Desperately, he grabbed hold of the doorknob. Ow! It was cold, beyond cold. Merely touching it was painful. The doorknob had been frozen solid. They quickly deduced that the pipe next to the door had ruptured. Water released by the rupture had hit the door and frozen instantly. Santa shoved Junpei aside and pounded against the door. Hey, Lotus, you're out there, right? Open the door. She wasted no time in responding. What do you want? What's going on? The door won't open. Try opening it from that side, please. Fine. If you say so, hold on. Soon, they could hear Lotus on the other side of the door. Then the grunting ceased, and they could hear light panting as if from exertion. It's no use. It won't budge. You've got more people in there. You figure it out. Oh, gee, thanks. God damn it. Santa was shaking like a newborn deer. Or chihuahua. Jun was hugging herself and was shivering violently. Even Junpei, with the heaviest clothes of any of them, was clearly feeling the cold. With every breath they took, they could feel the cold working its way deeper and deeper into their bodies. Anyway, let's find a way out. If we don't get moving, we're going to be permanent residents. The 2 heads are better than none. I'm sure we'll figure something out. Yeah, you're right. Let's just take a good look around this room, okay? Right. They pushed in close to one another and began to search. It didn't take long for them to find something they hadn't expected. More ice. Several chunks of dry ice. Dry ice is just frozen carbon dioxide, right? Yeah, it is. I wonder how warm it was for it to turn back into gas again. Hell if I know. How's that gonna help us anyway? Oh, well, I figured we might be able to use it to get out of here. They were about to move on when June spoke up. Carbon dioxide's sublimation point is negative 109 degrees. Any warmer than that, and it'll turn into gas. Any lower, and it becomes a solid. That's how cold it is in there, my god. Junpei looked at her dumbfounded. How do you know that? Or anything? Anything that you've talked about. Despite my looks, I'm the queen of random knowledge. Oh. It shows. Looks bad to mess up when you're showing off. Almost. Oh, you're so cold your mouth's going numb? Yuff, what's white? Yeah, what's white? You're just doing that on purpose, aren't you? June giggled and did her best to hide her guilt. At least she was still feeling good enough to joke. I didn't touch anything. Come on, guys, don't you think that's kind of weird? I wonder why it doesn't turn into a liquid first. Santo was now shivering at an astounding rate, but his curiosity seemed unaffected. His patience was wearing thin. How the hell would I know? And how the hell is that going to help us get out of here? We don't have time for this crap. Actually... Junpei stopped mid-sentence, surprised by June's interruption. I kind of wish their names weren't so similar. Under enough pressure, carbon dioxide will turn into a liquid. This isn't a really good time for chat about science. But I was wondering the same thing. Wondering what? Wondering why carbon dioxide doesn't turn into a liquid unless it's under pressure. Right, it just seems weird. What is a liquid between 32 degrees and 212 degrees? So why isn't that the case for carbon dioxide? H2O and CO2 are pretty similar. No, they're not. They're totally different substances. Look, guys, if we keep this up, we're just gonna freeze to death. You good with that? You wanna die talking about sublimation and gases? 'Cause I sure as hell don't. He fixed both of them with a glare. Now let's get back to work. Assuming you don't want to end up like a pair of ice sculptures. Junpei turned around, the problem dealt with. Or so he thought. There's a kind of ice that doesn't turn into liquid when it goes above 32 degrees. I heard about it. Its melting point is 96 degrees. Its melting point is 96 degrees? You mean there's water that freezes at 96 degrees? Yeah, well, you could also look at it as ice that won't melt until it's 96 degrees. Water that freezes at 96 degrees. Ice that won't melt until it's 96 degrees. Now that was difficult to ignore. Junpei frowned. So what's this ice with a melting point of 96 degrees called? I heard it's called Ice 9. Ice 9? Originally, Ice 9 was a made-up substance invented by a science fiction author. But recently, scientists have discovered that such a substance actually exists. Wait, hold up. So is this thing called Ice 9? Or is it water? Like I said, if the ice is over 96 degrees, it'll be liquid. If it's under that, it'll solidify. So you could think of it as a polymorph of H2O. Here, think of it like diamonds and graphite. They're both made of carbon, right? But depending on the structure of the crystallization, the hardness and structure are completely different. So you're saying normal water and this Ice 9 are like that? Yep. She wasn't finished. Have you heard the story about the crystallization of glycerin? Or glycerin? Oh god, English. Especially science English. For 150 years after the discovery of glycerin, people cooled it, warmed it, and did all sorts of things to it. But whatever they did, it never crystallized. However, one day in 1920, some glycerin that was en route to England by ship was discovered to have crystallized during the trip. Naturally, scientists worldwide wanted to research this new crystallized form of glycerin and began asking for samples of the seed. A seed is, of course, a sample of the original crystallized substance. With a seed crystal, further crystallization of glycerin would be a simple matter. However, something very strange happened. Not only did the glycerin encouraged by seed crystals begin to crystallize, nearby samples did as well. It didn't end there. After that day, all glycerin in the world began to crystallize naturally when cooled to less than 64 degrees. Before that day, no matter how glycerin was cooled, it refused to crystallize. And once the crystallization had begun, it was almost like, how do I put it? It was almost like all the glycerin in the world was communicating. Communicating in some way that we can't sense. Oh my god. Was kind of annoyed. June was nice, but he'd had enough of her ridiculous stories. So all of a sudden, a substance began to crystallize without a seed crystal. That seemed unlikely. No, impossible. In fact, it was utterly ridiculous. Even so, Junpei couldn't help but ask. What does that have to do with Ice 9? To his surprise, it was Santa and not June who answered. What she's saying is that it's a lot like Ice 9. What happened, I mean. A lot like... That would be bad. If water everywhere started freezing at 96 degrees... Man, it'd be the end of the world. Junpei felt that Santa might not be treating the idea of the end of the world with the proper concern. At any rate, we're not going to have to worry about the end of the world. Unless we can get out of here pretty damn quick. He was right. Junpei shivered. Alright guys, I think that's enough of that. I didn't think we'd get quite this far off topic. I mean, I know I'm kind of at fault here, but we can't be screwing around anymore. Seriously. I might go by the name Santa right now, but I didn't grow up in Iceland. I freaking hate the cold. So, lady and gentlemen, what do you say we get the fuck out of here? I'd love to, but how? This. Santa grabbed a plastic bottle off the table and tossed it to Junpei. A bottle? Oh, I get it. Wasting no time, Junpei shoved the dry ice into the bottle and ran toward the door. Near it was a burst pipe leaking drops of warm water. He let a decent amount of water trickle into the bottle, then screwed it firmly shut. That done, he tied it to the doorknob. Okay, this just might work. What are you doing? It's a bomb. A bomb? Yup. The warm water in there is melting. Well, sublimating. Actually, the dry ice, which is causing the carbon dioxide to build up, and since the gas takes up more space than the solid. See? The bottle's already starting to swell. If we hit it with something, it'll explode. Junpei scanned the room looking for something to hit the bottle with. Finally, he found it. A piece of meat that had been frozen solid. This ought to do it. He pulled his sleeve down over his hand and grabbed the meat. Stay back. I don't know how big of an explosion it's going to make. Santa and June exchanged a look and scurried away from the door. As soon as they were clear, Junpei hefted the meat. Alright, here it goes. 3, 4, 5. You're counting the wrong way! Oops. That is a really sad excuse for a joke, man. Sorry, dude. Alright, for real this time. You guys ready? Yes, whenever you're ready. Just throw the damn thing. Alright, here I go. 3, 2, 1. Junpei summoned up all the strength he could muster and hurled the meat at the bottle. With the same motion, he ducked down into the cellar with Santa and June, just as... Junpei leaped up out of the cellar and ran to the door. Jumpy, the ice in the door, is it gone? Yeah, it's gone. The blast must have shattered it. Yes, alright, let's see if it opens. Junpei grabbed the knob and pushed with all his might. The door gave way easily, and all three of them tumbled out of the freezer at once. Hooray, we're out! June, relieved, collapsed onto the floor. Move! Santa shoved past Junpei and ran straight to the grill, which he immediately grabbed. Oh, god damn it. Hot. Fuck! He proceeded to kick the grill in a futile but amusing fit of rage. Or futile, I don't know. But where was Lotus? It took Junpei only a moment to find her. She was sitting on the counter, idly scratching her chest. Welcome back. I was starting to get tired of waiting for you guys. With a great yawn, Lotus lowered herself off of the counter. Junpei clenched his teeth and walked toward her. What were you doing? What do you mean, what was I doing? I was waiting. We were gonna die! Oh, yeah? Bet you didn't, so everything worked out alright, didn't it? What the hell? Just kidding. It might not look like it, but I was really worried. Don't give me that crap. I'm telling the truth. I mean, if you died, then I'd be in trouble too. If you died, then I'd be stuck here and I'd die too, see? I did all I could. I even looked around to see if there was anything I could use to pry open the door. But I couldn't find anything. So all I could do was wait. I mean, what else did you want me to do? Call the cops? It was true there wasn't much she could have done, but something about her tone. Junpei gritted his teeth. Fine. But there's one thing I have to ask you. What's that? You didn't close the door, did you? What? You think I closed the door on you? Why would I do something like that? It closed on its own. I told you before, if you died, then I died too. She was right, and Junpei knew it. Without them, she'd be in very serious trouble. It seemed that an accident was the only explanation for the door's closure. If Lotus had really wanted to kill them, all she would have had to do was bar the door from the outside. And she hadn't. Well, she hadn't done anything. The most she was guilty of was laziness or negligence, not attempted murder. Junpei swallowed his anger and did his best to apologize. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I doubted you. Oh, yes, well, that's all right. As long as you understand. Lotus looked away and twirled her hair between her fingertips. His vengeance against the grill complete, Santos swaggered back toward Junpei and Lotus. Hey, no more screwing around, you two. Break time's over. Especially for you, lady. You've just been sitting on that fat ass of yours while we were freezing to death. How rude. I was plenty busy. Yeah. How about you put all that energy into something besides bitching? Let's go. After some hard work and hard thinking, Junpei and the others solved the room's puzzles and unlocked the exit. Well, thanks for just, going through all that. Just skipping it. I guess there isn't much else to do. And much else to talk about that's exciting. Except for the freezer. They stepped out of the kitchen and into a hallway that looked rather familiar. A metal grate stretched from wall to wall. Beyond it were 2 elevators and the entrance to the kitchen. They had entered the kitchen from one door and come out the other. That meant their map of the ship's interior was accurate. They laid the map out in front of them and began to discuss their next step. There were 4 possible routes: A, B, C, and D. First, A and B. A and B seemed to connect to an L-shaped room. However, the 2 doors that led to the room were both locked and could not be opened. Next was Route C. This goes all the way to the main staircase. That means it's door 5, one of the numbered doors. Then do you think we would meet up with the other 4 after this hallway? No, I don't think we will. Why not? Look, there by the stairs. See how the gate is opened? When we went into the kitchen, it was closed. But it's open now. What do you think that means? They opened it. Most likely. Then if we take Route C, we're going backwards. That would be pointless. Then that means all 4 looked at the map. They all looked at the staircase, its lazy curve leading down, deeper into the ship. Route D, then. D it is. Yep, Route D. Then we're set. They jogged down the stairs until they reached the C deck. Just to be sure, they kept going to check the deck beneath. Yeah, just like I thought, D deck is totally underwater. Just like the bottom of the central staircase. The water gazed back at them, its smooth surface like a great mirror. As ominous as it was, Junpei took at least some comfort from the fact that the level hadn't gone up much since the last time he'd seen it. They turned back to C deck. It didn't take them long to find the 2 elevators in front of the stairs. They looked identical to the elevators on the top floor, with one exception. These elevators had a card reader on the wall between them. On the card reader was a strange mark. Hey, look, it's Lotus's symbol. Huh? See, it's the woman symbol with a thorn on it. That seems like... Ouch! Ouch, 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 ouch! Lotus had taken hold of Junpei's hair. She began to shake him violently, and he thought he heard a low growl coming from her throat. Such violence! Junpei began to wonder if she was not the devil itself. With an uncomfortable smile, June spoke up. This is a Mercury symbol. The thorn symbolizes the wings on Hermes' staff. Hermes, herpes, whatever. If we can't get this thing to work, these elevators aren't going anywhere. In other words, we need a key card with the Mercury symbol on it. Probably. They gave up on the elevator and returned to the stairs. A hallway stretched out to the left. A great many doors lined both sides of the hallway. They weren't sure how many, but certainly enough to be discouraging. Damn it, if we try and search all these, the sun's gonna go down before we've done half of them. I think the sun already set. I have a feeling this ship is the only thing that's going to be going down anytime soon. It's even worse. Well, we can come back to this hallway later. Let's check the hallway on the other side, shall we? Frustration and fear building, they walked back to the stairs. To their right was a small hallway. Quickly, they headed into it. It was approximately the same size as the alcove in front of the stairs. The hallway led toward the stern, and at its end was a set of double doors. Let's open it. Junpei nodded and grabbed the one closest to him. Junpei didn't know what to make of what he saw. He simply stood, unable to speak. The other simply stared, open-mouthed. After a few long moments, Santa managed to speak. What the hell is this? A massive room stretched out in front of them, more a cavern than a room. Its vastness was oppressive, and it bore down on the four companions. It was not empty, however. The entire room was filled with lines upon lines of beds. They were simple things, little more than pipe and thin mattresses. Is this a hospital? He had at least been able to put a name to the harsh scent that pervaded the room. The room swam with the harsh, biting smell of antiseptic. In the center of the room were shelves stacked with medicine, and a number of medical devices the function of which Junpei did not know. More importantly, however, on the back wall of the room were 4 doors. 3 of them were emblazoned with large single-digit numbers made with thick red paint. The door on the left was labeled 3. The second door from the left and had no number, but the third had been given a 7. And the rightmost door had an 8. There could be no doubt they were numbered doors. It did strike Junpei as strange, however, that the door between 3 and 7 should be blank. What he wondered, could it mean? Let's take a look at the doors. Yes, that sounds like a good plan. Junpei headed toward the doors, weaving his way between the beds. He started with door 3 on the left and moved to the right until he reached door 8. It's no use. Well, of course. If it was that easy to open these doors, what would be the point of the nonary game? We have to activate the red, or the numbered doors won't... Wait a minute. What's wrong? Look, the display on the red. There's nothing on it. Huh? Don't you remember? The red at the central staircase. If no one was inside, it said vacant. Oh yeah, you're right. But this one... There's nothing on it. Right. I wonder if it's broken. Only one way to find out. It didn't respond. All 4 took turns placing their hands over the red, but it refused to open. They pulled at the lever, and still it did nothing. As they soon discovered, it wasn't only the red for door 8 that was behaving strangely. The red on door 7 also refused to respond. And door 3 was similarly silent. none of them would respond. What did it mean? I knew it. They're broken. Zero sure sucks at maintenance. No, that's impossible. You really think Zero, who prepared all of this, would make such a stupid, simple mistake? Maybe, but that doesn't explain why this thing ain't working. It was at that moment that they heard a voice from behind them. I believe the bottom of the device has been removed. Snake! But it was more than just Snake, Ace, Clover, and Seven. More than just Snake. Ace, Clover, and Seven quickly filed into the room as well. Although they were glad to see one another, it wasn't terribly surprising that they had. If it had been the other party who'd opened the gate in front of the kitchen, it wasn't unreasonable that they'd bump into one another eventually. The rest of Snake's team, however, did look rather surprised. How did you end up here? After a moment of silence and surprise, everyone suddenly began to talk, desperate to exchange information. They talked about the rooms they'd been through and how they'd ended up in the same place. Of course, none of it was very useful information, but that hardly mattered. They were happy to simply see one another again. Although the level of cheer varied greatly from person to person, each one of them was wearing some manner of smile, almost as though they had already forgotten about the death of the ninth man. No, thought Junpei, perhaps that wasn't it. Perhaps thoughts of his death were what drove them to smile at one another. Not in a morbid or hateful way, no. The ninth man had died, but they were still alive, and that was something to be happy about. A sort of simple, uncomplicated joy, Junpei thought, the joy of being alive. Still alive. He felt sorry for the ninth man, but more than anything, Junpei was just happy to be alive. There you have it, our half of the story. Later. Remind me later. His part finished, Ace fell silent. For a moment, Junpei was silent and thought. Then he spoke. Okay, let me see if I've got all this straight. When you guys got here, the bases for the Reds were already gone. And you looked all over this room, but you couldn't find anything. So you figured that there might be something in the hallway with all the doors. So you went and had a look? Yeah. And while you were looking around, you heard voices? Uh-huh. So you followed the voices and came back here. Indeed, that was how we found you. Junpei examined the 3 Reds again, just in case. On the bottom of each was a long, thin gap. It looked like a slot for something, probably something electronic. Well, this isn't good. If the Red is inactive, we can't keep going. Well, what about that hallway over there? Isn't there anywhere else we can go? No, there isn't. There are plenty more hospital rooms, but nothing else. Hospital rooms? That's what's behind all those doors? Yes, there are a number of individual rooms, in addition to this large one. There was a door at the end of the hallway, but it was locked. There was an astrological symbol engraved near the keyhole, however. I was able to get a good feel of it. I believe it was the symbol of Jupiter. Not again, those goddamn things are everywhere. I wonder what they all mean. For a moment, everyone was silent, deep in thought. While we're asking what things mean, what's the deal with this room? I mean, I thought this was a cruise ship, but I can't imagine a cruise ship would have a hospital like this. Of all people, it was Seven who answered, and with calm confidence. Well, I figure it's probably a hospital ship. Chances are, it's the Gigantic. The Gigantic? Junpei looked confused. So did everyone else. What is this gigantic? Seven knit his brows for a moment, then began to explain. The gigantic? He explained that she had been a sister ship to the Titanic, built in the early 20th century. The Titanic had two sister ships, who were identical to one another in nearly every aspect. The gigantic was said to be one of them. She was initially intended to be a passenger liner, like the Titanic, but soon after the ship was launched, the First World War began, and she was pressed into duty by the British Navy as a hospital ship. Sometime later, the gigantic was damaged by a German mine in the Aegean Sea. She managed to run aground with the incident and consequently was not sunk. What then happened to the gigantic after her fateful encounter in the Aegean Sea? One theory ran that a man named Lord Gourdane purchased her. Lord Gourdane, it seemed, had been one of the few survivors of the Titanic tragedy, and that trauma had turned him into an obsessive collector of all things related to the Titanic. As his obsession deepened, he began to desire the Titanic itself. That, of course, was impossible. The Titanic lay at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The gigantic, however, had not suffered such a dire fate, and as she was identical to her sister ship, she caught Lord Gourdane's eye. So you're saying this Lord Gourdane bought this ship? Yeah, at least I think I am. That's impossible. No way we're in some boat that's almost 100 years old. Pipe down, just pay attention. What, that's it? Well, have you got any proof? Proof? Proof that this ship is really the gigantic. Well, this ship's got stuff that's like the hot Titanic and a hospital ship. So I just figured. Oh, for goodness, don't tell me that's your only reason. No, I've got more. Like? Well, Seven looked around desperately, doing anything to avoid meeting Lotus's piercing stare. He scratched his head for a moment, then gave up. Finally, he opened his mouth. I don't know. Lotus sighed and shook her head. I guess your memory isn't back yet, is it? Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, wait a minute. Memory isn't back? Junpei was, he felt, legitimately shocked by what seemed to be new and very important information. Everyone else, however, seemed unimpressed. In fact, they all looked at Junpei as though he had said something very strange. Wait, was I the only one that didn't know? Everyone nodded. Why? Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't tell you, huh? I told the rest of him before we ran into you on the stairs. I told him I couldn't remember a damn thing from before I woke up. What? Then, almost as if to save Junpei from further embarrassment, a bell began to ring from far away. It sounded as though it was the clock at the main stairway. Junpei counted each chime carefully. 10, 11, 12. Oh, the spell's broken. It's midnight. And we've still got 6 hours left, right? We don't have any time to screw around. Let's get going. We gotta find the missing parts for the Reds. What do you mean, fine? How on earth do you propose we do that? We've looked everywhere in this room. That only leaves one place to look. One? Well, I guess that's not really right. Wait. Don't tell me you mean we need to search all of the other rooms. Don't freak out. We already searched 4 of them. 4 rooms. We just have to split up the rest between the 8 of us. If each person does 6 rooms, that'll be 48 rooms, right? So there are 48 rooms left. Her earlier experiences had apparently not encouraged Lotus to trust Seven. Seven scratched his head awkwardly. I don't know. After a little more discussion, they split up and headed toward the rooms to begin searching them. Junpei was chosen to search the rooms on the starboard side, moving from fore to aft. They also determined when they would return to report their findings, the next time the clock sounded the time. When it did, they would meet back in the large central room full of beds. If, during their search, any one of them were to locate the missing components, they were to yell for the others. If this strategy failed, they'd return to discuss their options later. The details decided, they left to begin searching. Out into the hallway they went, each to the rooms they'd been assigned. However,